It's a shame to say, but let's face it, not every genre requires fast tapping licks. But what are some things that every style of music requires? Things that are always in anyone's practice routine. Here are my top 3 practice routine musts. If you like what you see here today, please consider subscribing and checking out the links in the description for some other fun stuff. So let's get into it. Number 1, rhythm. Super duper important. Doesn't matter what genre you play, you're gonna want your leads and your rhythm playing or comping to be in time. Especially your leads, but especially your comping. You spend so much more time playing the rhythm parts to a song than the solo, it's really worth it to take the time to make sure those rhythm parts feel great. Although I'm fairly certain that no audience member has ever clapped or shouted woohoo at a guitarist playing their rhythm part in time, they do get drawn in by a band that's very in sync with each other. Rhythmic accuracy can sometimes be really connected to your emotions. Every now and again, my tendency to overthink or be anxious can lead to me hesitating or rushing the time, which is not something that's unique to me at all. This means that even after you've practiced all your cool rhythm chops, the best way to combat any kind of rushing or hesitating is actually just to really know the song you're playing, the fill you're about to play, whatever. It's about having a lot of control. So how do we work on rhythm? A good rhythm exercise and warm-up is just doing muted strums along with a metronome for about 5 minutes at the top of your practice routine. Playing muted quarter notes, eighth notes, triplets, sixteenths, etc. is a really good way to focus in on exactly what you're doing, and it's almost like a meditation at the top of your practice routine to really shut out the rest of the world and get used to focusing on what you're doing. Once you're warmed up, it's worth it to try to learn some of the historically fun rhythm parts. From Smells Like Teen Spirit to Minor Swing to Pride and Joy. After that, running scales, arpeggios, and your favorite solos or one you wrote out to a metronome or backing track would be ideal. And then recording all of that and listening back to see if what you played is what you thought you played. The recording and listening back part is huge. It's one of the rare moments in life where you can actually check back on the reliability of your senses and your memory to see how successful something actually was. If you felt really off time or like you were locking in and the recording says the opposite, it'll dictate what's next for your practice routine. Number 2 is fretboard familiarity. This includes knowing the notes on the fretboard as well as your scales, arpeggios, and chords. None of this knowledge ever hurt anyone. When talking about the process of memorizing, there's a term called chunking. It's what happens when you're trying to memorize a phone number and you memorize the area code of 818-626-510, whatever, as one thing, even though it's 3 numbers. As you hone your knowledge of scales, chords, arpeggios, chord progressions, and a repertoire that uses all that knowledge, you're really also learning how to chunk different musical ideas together. If you said to any professional musician, hey, the song we're about to play, key of D, verse 1-6-4-5, chorus 4-5-6-1. Good? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. They should be able to play that song mistake-free without having ever heard it before. Because those number groupings mean very standard pop chord progressions, so the musician will just be remembering 2 things as opposed to 8 chords floating around in space. It's a slow and often frustrating process to learn the notes of the fretboard, and there's often no shortcut. The way I'd suggest to go about it and have the most fun is to actually just build a repertoire, and while you're playing through the songs, name each of the notes that you're playing in all of the chords, arpeggiate your way through chord progressions, and then eventually change the key of the song, up a whole step, down a whole step, whatever. Even at higher experience level, this exercise still holds true. The progressions might just get faster and the arpeggios might just get tougher. The last and third part was actually hinted at earlier, which is building a repertoire. A couple years into playing guitar, I was falling into a common trap involving repertoire. I was so interested in learning parts of someone like Steve Vai's solos, not out of laziness, but because I wasn't good enough to play the whole thing yet, and my scales and arpeggios and other things, that I forgot to learn songs. That was sort of an embarrassing oversight, but not a rare one. Somewhere along the way, I'm not really sure where, I became under the impression that any kind of uniqueness in your playing is because you didn't listen to a bunch of stuff and you created something that's never been created before out of thin air and with no reference. Over time, though, it seemed less of shutting things out and more of just absorbing things I love, and then it would be expressed in whatever way that would come out naturally. It's really important to build a large repertoire of the genres you love so you can also get to know the subgenres of the genres you love. And also the idea that if you transcribe some solos or are clearly influenced by someone that you forgo all originality is ridiculous. I really enjoy the idea of a musician who's like a part-time historian. I might be a rock guitar player who knows like 3 songs and sort of had a solo, and then I'm like, yeah, my job's done. Or I'm a guitarist who's delved into the history of rock, blues rock, country rock, folk rock, new rock, classic rock, post-rock, grunge, and I'm someone who has a very deep appreciation for what I do in context of all of that, as well as someone who's broadened my horizons as far as where I can get inspiration from. So it's worth building set list after set list of like 8 to 12 songs that you think would push you just a little bit. Not so hard that you can't possibly even finish it, but not so easy that you're like, I basically heard it once and I know it. After 3 months and especially 3 years, you'll become this walking songbook and historian of music you love. And that's why we started playing music in the first place, because we love music. These are what I think are the top 3 things that should be in any practice routine, but if you think differently, please let me know in the comments. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.